this is the next book review. We are doing Leitch's Mysteries of the Medieval Grimoires, pardon me. So let's just jump right in. At first glance, the 1,000+ pages in this work are a bit intimidating. However, any anxiety dissipates once the casual tone and readable vocabulary are noticed immediately. The topics covered are done so with such depth that the book is definitely one of a scholarly quality. But the author's genuine passion allows him to present the knowledge in a certain way that is no more complicated than as if he were engaging in an everyday conversation with a common stranger. This, as well as the nearly chronological order that the information is presented in, introducing new chapters and new settings quite often, contributes to allowing the reader a pleasant experience throughout the lengthiness of the book. The significance of the materials covered is mostly due to their contribution to the contemporary view of magic or occultism, now present in the far corners of Western philosophy. This edition focuses on the most popular grimoires to circle the most dedicated communities, before the mainstream groups were made popular, such as the Golden Dawn. Before these secret societies combed through the texts that had survived the famous witch burnings, there were only a few that stood out for their completeness, frequent mentions in other works, and the grandiose claims within their pages. The magical works can be traced as far back to be alongside the very beginning of writing in ancient Egypt. It isn't until the medieval or Renaissance era that we start to find what we consider today to be full-on actual grimoires. That is to say, usually an identified person's complete theory of the universe, along with records of their interactions with said universe, including the unique tools, rituals, and results that led them to their conclusions. Grimoire is simply a French word for grammar. Now, most of us have some idea of what grammar school consists of, that being basic math, very basic sciences, such as color theory and animal identification, and of course words. So if words are the basic components of spells, then a grimoire could be seen as the context, utensils, and environments which aim to emphasize the usage and potencies of those certain word groups that make up such particular spells. Essentially somewhat of an action book, complete with instructions concerning the best ways to ensure a number of chosen outcomes. Now we see such works appearing during this time period, not because it took that long to polish the ability to write, but because it was during this era that there was a certain desperation to record such information in efforts for it not to be completely lost to future generations. Perhaps this is part of the reason these works possess such intrigue and mystery today. Before the monarchs began forcing Catholicism on the populations, superstitions and traditional rituals were passed on from family to family through day-to-day words and actions without a second thought. Though there are some records concerning the topics of magic throughout the ages, it isn't until the medieval era that there is a true concern that anything considered unorthodox would be entirely destroyed and forgotten, and therefore inaccessible to anyone, countless ideas and ideologies simply erased from history forever. Thus the grimoires were created in an attempt to record and preserve certain beliefs that were quickly becoming unpopular with authorities. Which brings up another mysterious and alluring detail about the grimoires that were developed during this time. Although reading and writing and books in general had become well established and a valued asset by this point, it was still only those considered to be of the elite that had access to any means of publication, and only a very few commoners were lucky enough to learn the very basics of reading, let alone writing. Most people were far more concerned with day-to-day survival and hardly had the luxury of leisure with which it would have been necessary to familiarize themselves with the latest in technology. In fact, these skills were used primarily for ministry work. The main goals of the monarchs consisted of spreading the Bible to every home from coast to coast while simultaneously stamping out paganism in all its forms. As quickly as possible, despite any attempts at resistance, these ancient ways of life were to be completely replaced with exclusively Catholic practices. Taking that into consideration, as well as the meticulous accuracy and extensive knowledge that is demonstrated within the most popular grimoires, it certainly appears that the authors were somewhat associated with the nobility of that era. This is extremely ironic because the people with the supplies necessary, such as large amounts of ink and paper and the capabilities, reading and writing proficiently, would have been the very same people who were ordered to rid the world of such works. Likely they were not just members, but high-ranking officials in the Catholic Church. This seems to be the only way that one would even have the time, as well as the means, to create the highly controversial literature that has now been studied for years ever since. In a way, this actually tends to give credence and perhaps legitimacy to the topics addressed in the grimoires, because the creators were taking such serious risks by even being associated with the information, in some cases putting their lives on the line. Leitch's book stresses the significance of this era on the development of Western esotericism into the contemporary understanding of magic and the traditions that are still used today. Although this era serves as the foundation for all magical practices, there are a few grimoires that have stood the test of time for their complete and detailed descriptions and the uniqueness of their ideas and methodologies. The one that seems to stand out the most is called The Key of King Solomon. Leitch proposes that most modern magical rituals are based upon this text in some way or another. From angels to demons, the Key of King Solomon outlines the essentials when it comes to inspiration from the divine and negotiating with the infernal. The first part of Leitch's book describes how magic has actually evolved from early shaman practices. There is no shortage of evidence to support this, and in fact the Bible itself is full of shamanistic or magical references, to the extent that one could actually basically use the Bible as a sort of grimoire. For example, the Book of Psalms is known as a classic for being referred to for the script for literally any spell or ritual. Moses' role as a shaman for his people is practically undeniable, his story being filled with ritualistic details and frequent interactions with the spirit realm. His staff or rod, which is mentioned quite often, is thought to be the original inspiration for the magic wand, as a powerful tool that has been adopted into most traditions. Even Jesus is considered to be strongly portrayed as a master magician, with advanced knowledge far beyond the average person, and with abilities that appeared nothing short of spectacular miracles to the majority of the people. One of the most convincing aspects of Jesus' story in regards to his relation to magic is the very day of his birth. It came in cohesion with a supposedly widely known prophecy, and even the location was predicted by astrological means by the three kings in the nativity scene. Other grimoires mentioned in this book, however, the Key of King Solomon seems to be the most influential. King Solomon is also a prominent figure in the Bible, and his grimoire is accredited with having perhaps the greatest influence on the understanding of modern magic ever. With great detail, he describes the hierarchy of spirits, listing many by name and providing their preferences to environment. This aids in approaching or summoning either angel or demon, and emphasizes how to stay in control of the situation. He introduces many tools and symbols such as seals, sigils, and pentacles, as well as the magical circle, which is used to contain the spirit and acts as a barrier between them and the magician for him to maintain control, and also for protection against possible malevolence. There are certain preparations that must be carried out before these interactions, involving purity such as fasting, and proper attire such as the magical robe and slippers, which are all intended to assist in focusing one's intentions. Also noteworthy is the association granted to the celestial bodies with magical practices. Leitch displays an extensive knowledge in this subject, and his book is an excellent reference to any amateur astrologist looking to develop their skill in this area. He lays out the basics in an easy-to-understand manner and smoothly transitions from a complete beginner's guide to explaining the deeper complexities of advanced astrology. From the hours of the days to the days of the week, these times, when utilized, will strengthen the force behind the will of the magician. It is extremely interesting to realize that the roots of contemporary magic are actually deeply influenced by biblical origins.